Hi you guys, welcome to my little paintbrush. My name is Miss Cami and today we are going to celebrate all things turkeys with my very favorite turkey, George. Not Tom, this is George. When I was a little girl we had a pet turkey named George and this is his portrait. Okay, so I'm really glad you're here today to paint this with me. Remember, you can pause this video, you can rewind it, you can watch it however many times you need to. So if I'm going too fast for you, just take a break and go ahead and pause, okay? Also remember that your painting's gonna look a little bit different than mine, and that's totally normal and okay. We want our paintings to all look different. So take a deep breath, relax, and just enjoy this process with me, okay? Let's dive right in. Grab a good flat brush. This can be whatever size you're comfortable with, but a nice flat one is good to start with, all right? Let's go ahead and get it wet. Just swish it around in some water because our paint needs that. And here is my palette of paint colors. And we're gonna start with the background, which is a nice sky blue. So I'm gonna go ahead and move a little bit of white over to my blue and just give it a nice little mix. Pretty rough. I don't worry too much about it being thoroughly mixed, okay? And then I just go straight onto the canvas with that. And this background is pretty small. George takes up the majority of our painting here, majority of our canvas. So we're just gonna go around George's head. Make sure you wrap your edges. This is a good time to do that. We're gonna go around George's head, and you can use the toe of your brush to come into those little crevices where those feathers are, okay? So you can actually use your brush to get into those areas even though you're using a bigger brush. Now you can see that my paint is coming off in different shades of blue, and that's because we didn't really mix it super well. So that's a good tip. If you mix it too well, you're not going to have those fun offloads of different shades of blue, okay? So we got one side. Let's go ahead and do the other. Now if you're feeling like your paint isn't offloading onto the canvas very well and you're kind of fighting your surface, make sure you're loading your brush really good and make sure that your paint is thinned out with enough water, because believe it or not, this acrylic paint gets super thirsty and it will be really difficult to work with if it is not thinned out, okay? Again, wrap your edges at this point in the painting process. This is a good time to go around those edges and make sure you have a nice finished piece. Now, if you're feeling like you want to add a little something, you can just put some white on your brush and brush in some lighter areas around George here. You can also do the same with dark. You can add some dark to your brush and kind of shadow closer to George's head. It's just kind of a fun little addition to our background, so it's not as flat. We kind of give it some depth into our background. Okay, you can just kind of blend that in. And this is done by just adding a little bit of that darker blue to a corner of our brush. See, just ever so slightly. And while our paint is still wet on our surface, we just kind of blend in a nice shadow. All about moving your brush consistently. If you're going too slow or you're shaking a little bit, you won't get that nice blend. So make sure you're relaxing and just keep working with your area, brushing back and forth. And any kind of depth or dimension you get is awesome. So if you're just getting different values, which means different shades of blue on your background, that's super fun. Just let it happen. And there we go. Our background is finished just like that. So let's go ahead and take our brush and give it a really good wash. I'm going to be using this brush for most of George, so I want to make sure I clean it thoroughly between each color because we're working with a lot of colors, and we just worked with a cool color and now we're going to go to our warms. And so I don't want to mud when I switch between those. All right, let's dive right into our fun, colorful feathers. You're welcome to do these colors in a different order than me. You don't have to do them exactly the way I do them. Have fun with it and just be creative. But I'm going to start with my biggest feather on either side of George's long neck, and that is going to be orange. So with each feather, I'm just going to add a bit of white before I go to the canvas, and this just helps with coverage. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit of white to my orange, and then I'll come over here to my first feather and just fill that in. Nice and easy. This is stress-free. We're just enjoying our creative process here. Okay, we're going to be careful around George, but sometimes we make little mistakes and we get paint where we don't want it. If that happens, just keep going with your feather and you can go back to it. We haven't painted in George's face or neck yet, so it's okay if a little bit of paint gets in there. Do want to be careful around our blue though, especially because blue and orange are complementary colors. So that means if our paintbrush gets into our wet blue paint and then we paint into our orange, we're going to have a little bit of mudding happening. So we do want to be careful there. Now what I like to do once my feather is all filled in is I like to get some white on my brush while my feather's still wet and just brush down some white. Basically just highlighting the very tips of my feathers, okay? You can go really heavy with this highlight. You could put a lot of white in there, or you can just be really soft and gentle and not add a ton. If you get too much, you can come back in with your dark orange and go from the bottom and just kind of work your way up, just like that. But what we want is a nice light coming at the top of our feather. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right into our next orange feather. So I like to put these right across from each other. And you notice as I paint, I use the flat of my brush to fill in my big areas, and then I'll switch to the toe of my brush if I want to get a nice thin line. And that's really important. It's important that we understand our tools, because if we understand our tools, then that's half the battle. We can get lots of different shapes with our brushes, different results. All right, so that feather is all filled in. Same thing now, I'm going to get some white on the tip of my brush and just start to blend white down from the top. See, I'm just like brushing it into my feather. Okay, just to add some light on the tops of those really fun, colorful feathers. Just brush it down. Awesome, you guys. There are our orange feathers. This turkey is coming right along. Let's rinse our brush again. We're gonna do it thoroughly. We're gonna make sure all that orange is out as much as possible. You can dab your brush onto your paper towel or whatever kind of, if you have a rag next to you, but don't get rid of all the water. We need some of that. Okay, now we're gonna go to yellow, and yellow's the only one I'm not gonna add, or one of the only ones I'm not gonna add white to, because I just want that nice deep yellow, and I'll add the light at the tip of my feathers again, but I think I'll just use the straight yellow right onto my feathers here. And look at that. This is when you would want to wrap your canvas, guys. Anytime you come up against the edge of your canvas like this, you'll know, oh, I gotta go around the side. Okay, so now I'll add white. I'll put white on my brush. Same thing, I'm gonna brush some light down from the top of my feather down, okay? Just adds a little dimension there. And then right into our other side here, get our other yellow feather. And just fill it in. We're trying to be careful next to our orange. But the nice thing now is we're using all warm colors, so they won't mud each other out like the blue and the orange would. So if you get some yellow in your orange, you probably will hardly notice it even happened. Okay, once again, some white on my brush, brush through some light, the tip of my feathers. Awesome. Before we wash our brush, since our nice little beak is also yellow, let's just do that while we have it on our brush, okay? So I'm going to fill that in with my yellow paint. This is a nice big beak. I love that George is so animated. He's got big features mixed with a few small features. That's what's fun about animation, is you want to get dramatic contrast in features. So just be gentle with your paint as you come around here. Don't want to get into that nice red part of it. All right, there's our beak now. Let's add some highlight. I'm going to load with some white. I come to the top, and I'm just going to brush down some light. Just like we've been doing this whole time. So you guys know all about this now. And you can totally add some light to yours without feeling too overwhelmed and worried about it. Again, if you lose some of that dark, you can come through again with it and you can brush it through. Just make sure towards the top you've got a nice bit of light coming through on George's beak. Okay, awesome. Let's wash out that brush again. Swishy, swishy. Okay, we are gonna go into red. Okay, our nice red feather. Now I'm not gonna do any white. I'm not even gonna brush in some white highlight, because what will happen, I'll have a pink feather and I want it to stay nice and red. So I'm just going to stick to my red, make sure it's nice and thinned out, and paint in that feather. Now I will come back once it's dry and do a little stroke of a highlight. I just don't want to brush from the top of my feather like we've been doing. Of course you're welcome to, if pink is totally okay with you. I just wanted to stick with a nice bright red feather. And so I'm going to opt out of that step. Again, this is where we would want to wrap our canvas. Let's come over to this side. Paint in this feather. Might switch to the toe of my brush to get a nice clean line up against that red as much as I can. Now we're going to outline our feathers, so let's not worry too much about perfect edges right now, because we'll clean these up a little bit. George is not finished yet. We don't want to judge this poor turkey quite yet. Give him a chance, right? And brush up just like that. Oh my goodness, we're almost done with George's feathers. Let's rinse again. Another good wash to our brush. Dab it off. And our last section is brown. So I'm going to dive right into my brown paint. You might find that brown is a little bit shy, and you will maybe want to do 2 coats of brown on your George on this feather. That's okay. Just depends on how heavy we're loading our brush and offloading it onto the canvas. So if you come painting along and you feel like George's brown is too light for you, just let it dry and then you can do another layer, no problem. Come over to this one. I'm going to make sure both feathers are filled in before I add my white to the edges. I will be doing that with my brown ones. So I just come through here, fill it in nicely, and then I'll add a touch of white, and again I'll blend down from the top of my feather. Not too much. This white and brown doesn't take much with that. Awesome, guys. Now I don't need to wash my brush because George's face and neck is a mixture of this brown and white, so we don't have to wash our brush. We can go right into it. I'm going to take a scoop of my white over here to my brown and just start to mix this up until I'm happy with the color, okay? If you want a really dark shade of a turkey, you can just keep adding more and more brown. If you want lighter, you can stick more with the whites. This is totally up to you. However, keep in mind it'll dry a shade or two darker on your canvas. So I always err on the side of lighter, okay? Because you can always darken something. It's a lot harder to lighten it. Okay, when you get that color you want, let's just go ahead and fill George in, okay? Nice long neck. I love this feature in George. This nice long skinny neck is so fun. We're going to go around these eyes. We're going to try and stay out of them, but it's okay. We're also going to paint them. So if you get some of this brown mixture into your eyes, it is okay. Just keep focusing. You can wrap George's head around the top of your canvas, get in that little section of the eye there. Nice. And then come around this other side of George here, and we're gonna have to go around all these little facial shapes here that we've got going on. Okay. So it's just about switching from the flat to the toe of your brush. Whenever you get around these little parts that seem tricky, just switch the way you approach your canvas, and that'll help you get nice clean edges. Again, don't forget there's going to be some outlining taking place, and so there'll be some cleaning up too. I'm going to add some water to my brush and mix it in. Anytime you feel that paint get a little sticky, you'll want to do that. Come around this cute beak. Is this the little gobbler? What's this called, this little red thing? I don't even know. I should have done my research. All right, we'll come up there, and then we'll really carefully go around that. And again, it's going to be a nice red, so if you get some paint in it, it's okay. Okay, we've got George filled in. Now we're going to do some fun little shadows on just the left side. So I'm going to get that paint in my brush, put a little brown on one corner, and just blend in a darker edge. Okay, and it's going to follow George all the way down his neck. And you can just keep blending back and forth on that. We're just going to try and keep that shadow to the left-hand side of George, okay? All the way around. And see how I just brush back and forth, back and forth? That's important to getting a good blend. You just want to keep working your paint. Just keep working it. Your shadow can be as wide as you want. It can go as far into George as you want. And then this other side of George, your right-hand side, we want to keep it a bit lighter. So you might just go over it with some lighter brown and just keep mixing it in there, blending it all in. And this is good to do anyway because, like I said, Our browns are a little shy, so we might need to do this regardless. Give our George another layer, but see how I'm keeping my whites over to the right and my darks over to the left. Just adding a little bit of white on my brush, blending it into George. Okay. George is looking pretty good, you guys. Let's give our big brush a wash. And we're ready to give our big brush a bit of a break. So just rinse that really good. And we'll set it aside, okay? And I'm gonna switch to a smaller flat. Now, if you've been using a smaller flat the whole time, you don't need to switch it, okay? But I've been using a pretty big flat, so I'm gonna switch to a smaller one. I'm gonna get it wet, and I'm gonna go to my big eyes, and I'm just gonna fill them in with white paint. So this is a good time if you got some of your beak in there, or some of your brown from your George's head. You can kind of clean it up a bit. You can go right over that. If you've got our paint kit from our studio, you can go right over that eye and the center part and still be able to see it. But just kind of reshape that eye, clean it up a little bit. We want it to be nice and wet so that we can blend in nice dark edge. Okay, so we just brush that in like so. Got a little water in my brush, so I want to be careful with that. A little too much water. I'll come to this side and do the same thing. Just clean up that edge all the way around. We have one eye that's slightly smaller than the other, which is really fun to play with. Again, it's that fun animation. Okay, so now that we have our eyes white and the surface is wet, we can go ahead and blend in a little bit of a shadow. So I'm going to have that white still on my brush. I'm going to dip the edge into black, okay? And I'm just going to follow my eye shape around, just like so. Okay, so what we're doing is just getting a nice shadowed edge. And you can go back and forth a couple times if you need to, just like that. Just use that clean edge to wipe it up. Now the bigger eye is in the foreground, okay? So we don't want to take that smaller eye all the way around. We want it to end. And then we'll go ahead and come up here and we'll shape in our bigger eye. Okay, so again, we're just using that dark edge and we're following that eye all the way around. You might notice your eye is growing. That's okay. That happens to me too. It grows, circles grow. Okay, so now we're gonna rinse that white and black out of our brush. Okay, and we'll take our flat brush still and get into some black paint. And we'll paint in the center of George's eye, okay? So you might be a little bit scared to do these circles, but just plant your brush on your surface and spin it around, then pick it up, plant it again, and spin it around again. And you should get a pretty good circle. Just plant it and spin it, plant it and spin it. If your eye is still super wet with white paint, you can let it dry before you do this step. Mine is good to go though. Okay, now we're gonna do our little one. Now remember, this one's in the background, so we're gonna stop. We're not gonna go all the way around. We're gonna stop right there, okay? Awesome. I'll wash my brush out. Rinse it really good. Set it aside. Now if you have a round brush at home, I've got this green one right here. That's what we're going to use to fill this red part in. But if you don't have this, you can still use your flat or you can use a detail. This is going to be red paint, so I got it wet and I'm just kind of swirling it around in my red paint here. swirl it around, loosen all that paint up. Make sure there aren't any drips. We don't want those drips. And then we're just going to come right here, follow it all the way around, okay, and fill it in. Come up to the tip of it as much as you can, and then just follow it around. Nice and fun. Gotta have this part, right? And there we go. While the red is still on my brush, I might get some of that brown in there and just put a shadow on the bottom of this guy. Just brush it through. Just a nice little shadow right down there. Nothing complicated. So fun. Okay, I'm gonna put my little round brush upside down. I'm gonna dip it in my white paint. Okay, so I kind of make this chocolate chip shape on the bottom. I've got lots of colors in my white paint here. Move some of those aside. I'm gonna make a little chocolate chip, and I'm gonna put a nice reflection in George's eyes. Just like that, just like using a stamp. Okay. All right, now we are going to move on to all of the detail brush portions of our painting. So if you're one of our really little artists joining us today and these next steps are a little scary for you, don't worry about it. You don't have to do these steps. You can leave George just the way he is. If you're feeling super brave, then grab a detail brush and let's work on our little lines, okay? We want a really little brush. We want to get it nice and wet, and we want to thin out our black paint. So I get it in my water, then I mix that water into my paint, and I do this several times until my paint is nice and thin. Okay, I don't want it to be thick, I don't want it to be sticky, I want it nice and thin for me. Okay, so I do that a couple of times. And now I'm going to come to the bottom feather, so the brown one first, okay? And I'm just going to do a line in the middle that kind of goes with the shape of the feather. And then I'm going to do these V's on either side of that line, just like that. Okay, we're going to do that with each feather, you guys. So take a deep breath and don't slow down too much or you'll get shaky, okay? We're just going to go up the center there. And then we're going to make our little V's. 1V, 2V. Maybe you can fit 3 V's, maybe just 4, maybe only 2. You fit what you can. I'm going to continue to loosen up my paint. That's super important. Okay, now we're going to come up the middle of this yellow one, and we're just going to go right up the middle there. If your brush stroke breaks a little bit like that, you can come back and kind of clean it up. And then our V's. This one I should be able to fit 4 V's on. Yep. Okay. Okay, now our orange one. This is our longest one, kind of our scariest one. Just gonna go up the middle. Okay, nice job. And then our V's. How are we doing, guys? It's kind of scary, huh? Let's do this other side. Let's start with our orange one this time. Come all the way down. And then do our V's. Okay, nice job. Now we'll go to our yellow. And our V's. Almost done with all these lines, all these V's. Okay, our final one down here. Nice work, you guys. That was difficult, so give yourself a high five. Okay, now we're going to separate each feather with a nice black line. Told you earlier that we were going to clean up our edges. That's exactly what we're going to do now. So we're going to come through and we're going to clean up those edges. Okay, you can start and go wherever you're most comfortable. We're going to give George a nice clean look here. All the way down there. Nice. Let's go over to this side and do the same thing. Let's clean up those areas in between our feathers. Really separate them. Give George the time he needs to get all straightened out here, all the way down. So our brush strokes are all going to be determined by how much pressure we put on a brush. So if we push really hard on our brush, we're going to get a nice thick brush stroke. If we put less pressure on our brush, we'll get a smaller stroke. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, we're just about done, guys. Hold on, don't get too discouraged yet. Let's go to our eyes and give our eyes an outline. All the way around. Just like so. Again, if you're feeling overwhelmed with the outlining portion of this painting, you can opt out of it, okay? That is just fine. Sometimes we like our painting just the way it is, and we prefer not to add. That's all right. But it's always a good idea to practice our lines. So if you have it in you, go ahead and take the time to give this a little try. Okay, so we did our eyes. Let's go ahead and go around our beak. All the way around here and down. Little curve on the end there. And then right back up. Oh, George is looking pretty cute. Okay, let's go around here. Nice and easy. Perfect. Okay, there's only one more thing to outline, and that's his head and his neck, okay? So do this in little sections if you need to. Come up here and just kind of go as far as you can with a nice steady hand. And then you might need to pick up and then go back. Pick up and then go back, and do that as much as you need to. Don't feel like you have to do it all in one stroke, okay? All the way around. Nice job. And then we'll do the other side of George. Same thing, go as far as you can without picking up. And then when you need to pick up, go back. Okay, we're we're just gonna come down his funky little neck here. All the way down. You can wrap these lines around your canvas if you want to as well. That is up to you. Wow, you guys, I hope you're loving this. Let's throw in some highlights and then sign our name. I'm gonna wash my brush really, really good because I'm gonna use white next. I wanna make sure my brush is super clean. Okay, so let's get some white on a nice clean brush. And let's start with our V's, and we're just gonna do some light at the top of our V's. See, I'm not really touching the black part. If you do, that's fine, but I'm kind of going above it. We're just kind of highlighting those sections all the way down. Just like so. And then you can go through and you can, oh, I got some black on my brush. Good thing I caught that. Wash it off again. That happens. Back into my white paint. You can kind of go through and highlight the top section of that long stroke as well. Highlights are important. They really brighten up your painting. So a lot of times I hear the kids say, oh no, not highlights. But they're so important because it just lightens it right up. Same thing on this side. Go through there. And over here. And this is a feather. You don't have to spend too much time. Every feather is different. You just want to wake them up a little bit. Wake those feathers up. Awesome job. All right, we can come through here and do a little highlight throughout the feather as well, kind of at the top and the base of them. We'll do the same thing over here, just kind of throw in some highlight here and there. Give George some fun little personality here. All right, let's take a little bit to, I'm gonna call it my little gobbler there. Cute. And then maybe you wanna put a little bit in the nose. You could do that too. All right, you guys, that is George. I hope you loved painting George. I do every year. I get to paint George. I'm gonna sign my name really quick. You can do this wherever you want to, but be sure to sign your name. Be proud of your work. I would love to see all of your Georges. So tag me in your photos, send them to my little paintbrush so that I can see your awesome artwork. Thanks for painting with me, guys. See you later.